Hi folks, Smudge here and welcome to Mastering in the Box, your home for simple guidance on digital mastering and digital audio. In today's video we'll be going through 3 new features inside of Studio One Professional 6.1 as well as covering one bonus feature. And if you do want to know more about the fundamentals of modern mastering, then stick around because I've got some great news for you. So for the first new feature we're going to look at the colour palettes. Some people love colour choices in a DAW, others are not so fussed. I get it. But for me, having colours to choose from to fit my eye makes me feel more inspired to use the software. And now in version 6.1 we have an extended colour palette to choose from. So if I click on a colour tab in the track column section, you will see we now have an extended colour scheme to choose from. But it doesn't stop there. If I click on this little drop down arrow here, you will see we now have the ability to store and load presets, but we can also create our own custom palettes using the hue, saturation and lighting colour scheme or the red, green and blue colour scheme. This is a great touch. Next up we have the new ability to create our own custom mastering templates. This is a great little time saver to have the project page set up the way you like it that is recordable in a simple template. So if I look at the project page in its default format, I don't like using the spectrometer in the third octave mode. It doesn't give me the granular detail I'm looking for, so I will always use the FFT mode. Next up we have the level meter. I don't monitor and peak in RMS because I have the true peak settings in this column on the right hand side here. So I measure in EBUR 128 mode because I like to measure in LUFS, loudness units relative to full scale. This also gives me the short term and the momentary readings. Next up, we want to make sure that we click this box here that says EBU plus 18 because this is going to extend the scale of the loudness meter. And lastly, in this column on the right hand side here, I don't want to measure in loudness units, I want to measure in loudness units relative to full scale. So I'll click this box here for LUFS. Now just note here that if I don't click this EBU plus 18 box, you will see that the scale caps out at minus 14 LUFS. So I will always recommend ticking the EBU plus 18 box to extend the scale beyond minus 14 LUFS. And last of all, if you use a calibration software, something like SonarWorks for example, or Goodhertz Can Opener for headphones, then you can click on the Listen Bus section, add the plugins of your choice to the template. So if I click on the Listen Bus, press F5 to get my plugins open, and then if I go down to my tools section, I need to find my Goodhertz Can Opener and I can put that in on the Listen Bus. And now all of this can be saved as a custom template. What I do now is I'll click on File, Save as Template, and I can name the template as PSA Mastering Template, add a subtitle, description or an icon if I choose, and then click OK. Now every time you open up a new project from the start page, you will have your custom template to choose from. So if you click New, Master and Release, then click on the User section here, you will see that we have our new mastering template. Click OK and that template is now pre-populated. If you're someone who works with a mastering plugin chain, you can't set the template up with empty tracks and preload the plugins to empty tracks. But what you can do is import a track and add your mastering plugins of choice. So for example, let's quickly import a file, and then what we can then do is, for illustration purposes, we can go in and add, let's say, an EQ. Let's add in the Elysia Master EQ. Let's then add in a compressor. Let's go to our mastering compressors. Let's use the TCL2. And lastly, let's say we want to add in a limiter. Let's say the TDR limiter 6GE. Then what I can do is click this drop down box in the insert section here, and I can store this effects chain. And let's call this mastering effects chain. And let's put it in the subfolder for mastering and click OK. Now that is stored as an effects chain. So if I was to delete this song here, let's go through, let's remove the track. If I go back to the project, import file, let's add in another track. We've added a track, I click this drop down box once again, go to mastering, and I can go down here and select my mastering effects chain. And it's going to pre-populate those plugins for me. Very nice indeed. Now we're on to our third feature, and technically I'm going to class this one as a bonus feature because this isn't strictly new to version 6.1. Between version 5 of Studio One and version 6.1, the default practices inside of the project page changed in respect of track pauses. So there used to be a 2-second pause in between tracks. So if I now zoom in, you will see there's no space in between the tracks. And this makes more sense because a lot of people are now mastering for streaming platforms, and the spaces in between songs aren't as important as they used to be when CD was the main medium. So it makes sense for the default practice not to include the 2-second pause. However, if you want to now include a 2-second pause, it's going to be a little bit fiddly because it's not the default practice. So what you'd have to do is kind of drag the clips, and then what you need to do is get it roughly to 2 seconds and really zoom in and make sure that you fine tune the pause, and let's say we want it around there, and then you'd have to go here and you have to reset the loop points. That's just time consuming. But there is another way of doing it. If you see up in the track selection column here, we've got the small little dash here and a little box. And if I click on this little box here, you will see this expands the track selection column, and we now have these little boxes here which give us a numeric. And this is where you set the track pause. So between track 1 and track 2, if I want to now have a 2-second pause, I can go in, put 2 in here, and you'll see it's now set a 2-second pause in between track 1 and track 2. This is a great touch and makes it really simple to adjust your pauses in between individual tracks if you're mastering for CD and you want to start adding those track pauses back into the project page. So before we get on to the final feature, I did mention to you earlier on that if you want to know more about the fundamentals of modern mastering, then stick around, because I am so pleased to announce that I have my first class available on Skillshare. The class is called Audio Mastering 101, a beginner's guide to modern music mastering. And here's a little sneak peek of what the class involves. In this class, you will learn what mastering is, the common terms associated with modern mastering, the fundamentals of loudness normalization and how streaming platforms will process your songs, limiting and how to use a limiter in a mastering context, equalization and how to achieve balance in your song, compression, do you need to use a compressor and how to use one to get the best results, final exporting and file conversion, and what files you need to release your song. It was a great pleasure in putting this class together, and I really do hope you folks find this useful. So there'll be links in the description down below where you can find the class. It's available through the Skillshare platform, and there's even a link for a 30-day free trial to Skillshare. So sign up below for the 30-day free trial, check out the course. I really do think you'll find it useful. So that's enough for me. Let's get back into the video. And for our last new feature, and for me this is the biggie, we now have new revised options for loudness normalization. Some of you may have seen my previous video titled Target Loudness Doesn't Exist. There'll be a link above for context. In this video I detailed how the old target loudness feature wasn't meeting the needs for modern mastering, and Presonus have come up with some new welcome updates. Firstly, from the release notes, you will see a step change in the terminology used. In version 6.0, we had reference to target loudness option, but in version 6.1, the terminology is starting to change to loudness normalization without reference to targets, and this is really important. If we look at the digital release section inside the loudness column, you will see that there is just one adjust loudness preset for streaming and no more individual presets for each of these streaming platforms. This is way more in line with how digital distribution works, as you can only upload one file to the distribution platforms. But even if you look at the preset max loudness and the preset max true peak levels, these are set to what I would class as the accepted normalization levels, excluding the likes of Spotify loud mode, for example. I use the term accepted as -14 LUFS integrated is one of the more commonly used levels by some of the streaming platforms. But the biggest change here is the new option for album mode, and this shows me that Presonus are really listening and taking this topic seriously. So what is album mode? Well, in short, when we master an album, we are not looking for uniform loudness across all songs. It makes no sense to master a fast-paced heavy metal track the same loudness as a ballad. It sounds unnatural, so we master to different levels based on the needs of each song, whilst ensuring there is balance between each song transition. This is often referred to as mastering intent. The album mode effectively enables you to export an album using the adjust loudness setting, but retains the mastering intent. To show this in practice, I've prepared a simple table to show you how it works. For this example, I'm showing the export settings for an album I mastered called Where Are the Angels by That Sfumato Effect. I've left links in the description where you can listen to this album. On this table we have the song name on the left, the original master levels for LUFS and True Peak in the green columns, the blue columns show the album mode export settings, and the yellow column shows the difference in LUFS and True Peak between the original master and the album mode. If we start with the yellow column, you can see that every song has a difference of 2.4 dB or LU. For information purposes, 1 LU is equivalent to 1 dB. If we then look at the original master column in green, we can see that the song with the loudest LUFS reading is Mr. Heartache, with a LUFS reading of -11.6. We know that the adjust loudness streaming preset in Studio One will normalise to -14 LUFS. So to get to -14 LUFS, the loudest song will be turned down by 2.4 dB or LU. And to maintain mastering intent, every song will therefore be turned down by 2.4 dB or LU. This function then falls in line with how Spotify, for example, will normalise an album, as Spotify doesn't change gain compensation between tracks. And here we are with the Spotify for Artists link, and it clearly states here, we normalise an entire album at the same time so gain compensation doesn't change between tracks. This means the softer tracks are as soft as you intend them to be. Mastering intent. And this is what the album mode tries to replicate. I really like the idea of this feature, but does this mean that streaming platforms will no longer need to normalise an album if I use this feature? In short, no. Streaming platforms will still normalise the songs based on the listening experience. For example, when in shuffle mode or in a playlist, I'm still also unclear on a starting point for normalisation. For example, is the loudest song normalised to -14 LUFS or is it the average? I don't know without further testing. I'll have to test each platform and test in both lossless and lossy formats. So that's how the feature works, but is it something that I'll be using moving forward? And the honest answer is no, because it is still trying to replicate what the streaming platforms are already doing. But it's not to say that it doesn't have its uses. So let's say, for example, I want to take Spotify. I want to get a good understanding of how this album will sound once it's been uploaded and once it's done its algorithms, etc, etc. What I could actually do is use this album mode to get a good idea of the album normalization modes in one of the streaming platforms, and I could do an export in, say, Vorbis, which is a lossy format, and that will give me a good representation of how it will sound once it's been uploaded to Spotify. Or let's say I'm someone who's not necessarily sure that I've got sufficient headroom with my true peaks. And let's say I'm a little bit concerned that I may not have enough headroom to avoid digital distortion once it's been uploaded to the streaming platforms. Then this could be a good fail-safe method for you if you are not feeling that comfortable that you've got sufficient headroom with your true peak levels. So to wrap this up, is it perfect? No. Is it for everyone? No. But I've got to say, well done to Presonus for actually trying to come up with a solution to tackle this issue head on. I've intentionally titled the thumbnail for this video, Thank You Presonus, because in my last video I entitled the video Presonus You Can Do Better, and they have done better. What they've done is they've taken the feedback on board and they've actually started to come up with new solutions and develop this feature further to try and make it more feasible and more usable for us in the mastering community, whether you're someone who masters commercially or whether you're a home recorder or a home artist and want to master the music yourself. At least they're trying to come up with solutions. And I'm very comfortable with the fact that I can be critical of brands when they don't get something right, but I also am comfortable in saying thank you when you do actually start to develop these things and take the community feedback on board. So kudos to you, Presonus. Thank you for at least trying to tackle this issue, and I'll have full confidence that they will look to develop this feature even more moving forward. So that's it for this week's video, and I hope you found this useful. I've got lots more content lined up, including the review of these bad boys, which are the OLLO Audio S5X headphones. I've had them for a few weeks now, and I've got to say they are absolutely amazing. Some more on that to come in due course. And I've also got another piece of software which I want to share with you, which is called Samply, which is a file sharing system, which is just amazing. Think something like Persona Sphere, including Zoom, all wrapped up into one package, and much, much more. So more details on that to follow. So I hope you found this video useful. If you do want to know more about digital mastering and digital audio, please make sure to hit that subscribe button below and make sure you tip that bell to receive notifications on all of our videos moving forward. And if you found this video useful, then please give it one of those bad boys for me. That'd be very much appreciated. So all that's left for me to say is I hope you'll keep safe and well, and I'll see you in the next video coming real soon.